And thank you to this young fellow here who saved the day. So welcome everyone to our month of August Empowered Senior Speaker Series. We're glad to see another full house here today. Great to have you all. Glad to welcome back to those who've been here before, and show of hands who's here for the first time today. Lots of first timers, welcome, warm welcome to you all, and please do join us again in the future. As you can see, we've got a room full of people who keep coming back, and we hope to add you to our list of names of people who continue to join us. And of course, one more. There we go. All right, we're in business. So for those who don't know me, my name is Marion Goard. I'm a real estate broker based here in Burlington. I specialize in working with older adults, later in life moves. It's not so much about the real estate, that's really my job, but what happens is that it's around the people's life transitions and the things that you're going through when you're making a change later in life. Selling a house and working with real estate is probably one of the most stressful things in anybody's life. And when it's happening to someone later in life, then clearly there's a lot more that goes along with that. So because of my experiences with working with older adults, I find myself here, have created the Empowered Senior Speakers Series, bringing topics that are of interest to anyone, whether you're moving or not. You don't have to be selling real estate, you don't have to have real estate, but it's all around the topics that are of interest to retired living and healthy living. So glad to have you here. I just wanted to thank our educational partners. It's the folks that are here up at the front who come every month, who support the series, and without them it would be difficult to facilitate. So thank you very much for your ongoing support, and I will just let them introduce themselves.
Okay, is this one working? Yes, excellent. So for those of you that were here last month, you probably know me, you know a little more about me. But for those that are new, my name is Carrie Abma, and I am an estate consultant. I have a company called Estate Solutions with Care, and I also offer services through a company called Financial Concierge. Anything from estate planning to document organization to assistance with executor and power of attorney roles to myself actually acting in those roles for you if you don't have anyone suitable. So if you have any questions or that sounds like something you might be interested in, come and say hi.
Hi, I'm Sarah Sunix. I work at Smith's Funeral Home. I'm a funeral director, but I do specialize in planning ahead and to help afterwards with CPP benefits and executor checklists for the executors that are named in the will that might not be Carrie. So I'm here to help. I work just down the street on Brant Street, and I'd love to chat with you about planning ahead so it makes it easier for your family.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kim Rutledge, and I'm the Sales and Marketing Director for Vistamere Retirement Residence in South Oakville. And today I've brought some information on how to be proactive versus reactive with decision making, trying to transition and understand all the information, learning about retirement. Just a quick show of hands. How many here have a fire extinguisher in their home? Wow, that's a lot of planning, safety. Well, it's just as important to pre-plan as well for any health emergency, and being proactive is exactly what I'm here to help you with. So I look forward to chatting with you shortly.
Hi, I'm Lori Meyer. I am a lifestyle consultant at Parkland and Castor. We have the full continuum of care. We've opened up our doors for our fully independent lifestyles. So. Except for the pool, it's just about ready. It has water in it, but it's just to test it, see if it doesn't leak. But we still have open tours every Wednesday. You can always contact me for a personal tour and maybe lunch. Okay.
Hello everyone, my name is Judy Rickey and I own Clutter Relief Services. I help navigate seniors and their families with the overwhelming task of downsizing or even right-sizing or clearing estates. And I'm going to be doing a lot of auctions coming up. Bid Rush is the name that I use for online auctions. If you want to learn more about that and about selling some of your items through an auction, come see me after.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeanette Bach, and my company is Fluid Senior Transitions. So I'm an elder care planner. I as Kim was mentioning, there's a really strong need to prepare for the next phase in life, and planning is going to be your friend. I am seeing an awful lot of crisis situations in hospitals, and I do help and advocate for seniors in hospital and let you know your rights, etc. But what I'm seeing is a tremendous amount of early discharges. And so come and talk to me after if if you've outgrown your home but not prepared to retire, to go into retirement living. It's just, I'm seeing these crisis situations come up. You have to get out of the hospital, and home is not appropriate anymore. So we really need to continue that conversation about appropriate living.
Hello everyone, my name is Nicola and I'm here from Chartwell Retirement Residences. We have 2 locations here in Burlington, Martha's Landing, which offers independent living, and then Chartwell Lakeshore, which offers independent living, assisted living, and memory care. So you do have the continuum of care there. Today I brought with me some complimentary meal coupons, so if you are interested to come in and try a meal with us and have a tour and get some information, come see me.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Meredith Joachim. I am a hearing specialist just around the corner on Maple Avenue at Hearing Well Matters. So we take care of everything to do with your ears, wax removal, hearing testing, fitting hearing aids, and taking care of existing hearing aids. Today I've got some information on untreated hearing loss and tinnitus, which I know is a big thing for a lot of people. So if you have any questions, please come see me.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lincoln Lewis. By background, I'm a nurse and currently working for Apollo. We specialize in home care and aging well in place. So if you have any questions about home care and nursing, definitely see me and we can have a conversation.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, everyone. There are other educational partners. You see their logos on the sign, on the slide, who aren't here today, but everyone's contact information and a little summary of what services they offer and what that company is all about is on the handout that you have, so you have easy access to be able to reach out to them. I can never say enough about these folks. They are all competent, caring, compassionate, and they absolutely will put your needs first. It's not their own or their company. And it's important in today's environment to know that when you choose to work with somebody, that they've got your best interests at heart and not their own. So let us be your first line of defense if you find a need for any of the services that we offer. And if we're not represented here today or amongst us all, some one of us will know who to contact and to reach out to in case there's a need that we can't solve. So thanks again, guys. Also, just a thank you to Lisa and Ida, who always are here helping to get the room set up, to keep me organized, and to get us all settled and started on time when we don't have any technical difficulties. So thank you so much. Wanted to, I mentioned last month, but again, I'll just reiterate it. So today's session is on housing options. This will be followed up by a session on Monday coming on the 17th that's going to talk more in depth about reverse mortgages. And then the following Monday on the 24th is going to be about accessory dwellings. Both those sessions will be at the training room at my office on Harvester Road. On the evaluation forms that you have, you can sign up there. You can talk to Ida and Lisa before you leave if you're interested in attending any of these. Those sessions, the capacity of the room is smaller, it only holds about 50 people. So it's important that if you are interested in attending one of those, that you do sign up, and I will be sending some reminder emails about them. But a great opportunity to learn more. Today we're just going to have an overview of them. And then also, again, before it becomes public announcement, we are going to be hosting a Burlington mayoral candidates forum on Wednesday, October the 7th. So that's the first Wednesday of October. We still will have the second Wednesday session, which is going to be in October. It's on medical assistance and dying, so we don't want to lose that session. But the one on the 7th is for the mayor's candidates. It will be here, same thing, 1:30 to 3. If you are interested in attending, I suggest that you do register for that, because as you can see, our room gets full quickly, and I want you folks to have the first opportunity to get yourselves a spot. Just a few housekeeping items before we've got a full session today, and also we did start a little bit late. I appreciate your patience and understanding if we do run over a little bit our 3 o'clock time slot. If you do have to leave, we understand, but we may just heads up, we may go a little later. Can assure you can confirm back there that you can still hear, we're good? You have the notepads. If you have any questions that come to mind during the presentation, just drop them down, and we'll have the Q&A at the end of the presentation, which is easier to have a more fulsome conversation then. And a reminder about parking, please. So we're on the honor system here. They just ask that if you have left your car in the back, that you pay $5 at the desk. And then if that's good for the afternoon, you could even come earlier this morning and stay the day. And what else we got? Everything good? Okay. So today's presentation, the reason that you're here, so just bear with me because I'm going to read this. I've kind of got a lot of my mind on the go and I don't want to miss anything. So I just wanted to give the proper introduction to the topic. So it's a topic that affects us all, whether we're thinking about it now or we'd rather not think about it at all. But the question is, where will we live next? Where will we all live next? And what we hope to avoid is having to make decisions on our housing while in crisis mode. Jeanette can speak clearly to that, and I'm sure the people from the retirement homes can also attest to the situations that they've encountered. It's no fun for anyone, and often the best decisions can't be made when we're in crisis. So many of you have come here because you're considering a move. How many considering a move? Or who wants to stay where they are? Everybody wants to stay where they are. So the reality is that although that's a hefty goal, it may not be possible because circumstances change, our health changes, our needs change, and we are all living longer, and perhaps our finances don't last as long as we had intended, so things can happen. So it's really best to have a plan in place and to understand what the options are well ahead so that you can make decisions by choice and not by circumstance. You might be here because you've got a parent or a spouse or someone else that you care for who may be thinking or in need of making a change. And the reality is there's no one-size-fits-all answer. For some, staying in the family home works, and the others, particularly if you have the right support, and for others, right-sizing, making a change is inevitable. And there's some options maybe that we haven't thought about in the past. We're going to have Garth talking about accessory dwellings. We're going to learn about how to fund these changes, and even if the change isn't in a minute, how we fund living our life in the future. But what's important is that you have a housing plan before you need one. We talked about here about having your estate plan, your will, all these other healthcare plan. We don't often talk about what our housing plan is. So it's something that we may not need today, and neither do we need our will today, hopefully, but it's something that we should have in our toolbox. So today's presentation is about providing information and not about what you should do. That's for you to figure out. But we want you to leave with a better understanding of the possibilities and the questions you should be thinking and asking about, and then the confidence to begin what the next chapter might look like. And I'm happy to say that today I'm joined by Garth Brown and Andy Hagen, who are going to talk about the different, I'll be talking about the options. They'll be talking about specifically residential dwelling, accessory dwellings, and how to fund your housing in later life. So, before we get started, I'll just ask Carrie to.
So our first speaker today is our very own Marion Goard, a real estate broker with Keller Williams Edge Realty and the founder and host of the Empowered Senior Speaker Series. Through this monthly series, Marion brings together trusted local professionals to provide older adults and their families with practical, reliable information on topics that matter as we age. Marion has been in real estate since 2013, with a particular focus on helping older adults and their families navigate downsizing, right-sizing, and later in life moves. Her healthcare background, combined with her personal experience helping her own parents navigate aging, home care, and housing transitions, gives her a unique perspective and a compassionate understanding of the decisions and challenges families often face. Marion is also deeply committed to community service and making a difference in the community she calls home. She founded 100 Women Who Care Burlington, bringing local women together to support charitable organizations in the community. Her leadership and service has been recognized with Burlington's Best Community Service Award, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Community Hero Award, and the Keller Williams Edge Community Icon Award.
Thank you. So the topic today is, where will we live next, and why is that important? So we're going to look at a bunch of things today, I'm reading upside down here. Whether your current home is good, whether it's suitable, what the options are, how to fund it, and how to get there. So I guess before, we'll skip that slide. It's important that we have peace, and so we'll back up a little bit. What's home? It's the place that we live. And it's really important to have peace in our home. And I also often say that peace begins at home. So then what is peace? So by definition, it's an environment that induces a physical and emotional feeling of safety, calmness, and serenity. So that's important to all of us. And ideally, our home is where we find peace, the most peace in our lives. And so why is that important? So because without peace, there can be harm. We can have burnout, increased stress, poor health, and it puts us in an unsafe condition. And then the opposite of being at peace, we have distress, tension, we're anxious, we're worried, we're uneasy, we're unhappy, we're fearful, and we're uncertain. So you can see the importance of living in that your home is a place that you find peace and that you're comfortable with, and it is the right place for you to be. So then, as a result, addressing our housing is an important aspect of life. It's just as we've created a will and a financial plan, perhaps a health plan, and having a housing plan should be part of our process. So we have to be able to look at what might be next. We need to look at what are we living in now. So are we using all the space in our house? Is it accessible? Can we do the stairs? Where's the laundry? Do we have help? Do we have support? Can someone come in and help us if needed? Where's our family? Where's our friends? Are they close by? When we need somebody, where are they? Can we afford it? What are the things that we have to look at in terms of repair and maintenance, and perhaps today and ongoing? So all those things need to be considered, and we also need to get a real grip on reality. And as we saw, everybody wants to stay in their own home, but unless we're realistic with ourselves and honest with ourselves, can we realize that perhaps where we are might not be the most suitable environment for us? Okay. So the one that works for you won't necessarily work for somebody else. No two people are the same. No two plans are the same. No two health situations are the same. No two environments are the same. So really what's right for you is what's right for you, and maybe not for somebody else. And again, you need to become very real with what our living situation is and whether or not it's appropriate. And will it be in the future? So the first question is, well, what about my own house? Should I stay or should I go? Do I want to stay? Is it possible to stay? Or do I want to move, or do I want to stay? So there's a list, a checklist. I've got some handouts at the back, and I've got some here that you can pick up after. But when you're looking at a personal survey, here are the questions I'm going to ask you to consider. Am I mobile? Do I need help doing things such as dressing, walking, or bathing? Can I still work in my garden? Can I cut the grass and shovel the snow? Can I go shopping for myself? Can I look after my own banking and bill payments? Am I comfortable living alone? Do I have problems going up and down the stairs? Do I have independent outings? Am I a prisoner in my own home? Can I clean my house, and do I want to? The answer is no. Can I do the laundry, and do I want to? Can I still cook for myself, and do I want to? Is my house just too big for me? Do I enjoy my home? And I think that's probably where most people get stuck, because they're in their home because they like it there. And so change is scary. And you don't know what the future brings, but we like where we are. That's why it's home, and it's peaceful, and it's working for us. Can I financially carry the house expenses, the utilities, taxes, etc. Again, we said we're all living longer, and perhaps our financial plans haven't matched our lifespan. Does the house require expensive repairs? Is it in need of modification or modernization? Is it a safe environment for me? Back to the stairs, is the laundry in the basement? Has the neighborhood changed? Burlington's changed a lot. And do I have friends or family nearby? And what would be the route if I chose to move? And then, why should I stay? So all of those things have to become part of our conversations. Back to no two people are the same. And we have this picture. So we're gonna look at some options. There's a whole bunch of them. And I remember when my parents were considering making a move, they definitely, adamantly wanted to stay in their own condo. They had already downsized from a house to a condo to another condo, and they were aging. And everyone around them felt that their living environment really wasn't suitable for them, that they should be making a change. And I remember my mother saying, but we don't have a choice. It's like, well, absolutely, you do. You have a lot of choice, but you're choosing not to make anything, and that was your choice, to stay. So there are choices, and we're gonna go through all of those. So, the first choice, staying in your own home, which is great. Again, we're back to all those factors around the maintenance and the stairs and the closeness to family, and can we bring in support. One of the things that we sometimes overlook is social isolation. So you're all here today, and I'm happy to see that, because studies have shown that seniors who stay actively engaged socially and intellectually, like you're all doing here, live longer, healthier, and more satisfying lives. I'm working with somebody now who's in her home by herself. She doesn't want to spend another winter there because she's isolated. She needs to get into a more communal setting. So living on your own without having any kind of social contact really does impact your health and your well-being. So that's one thing to consider if you are in your home by yourself. But there's lots of things that you should be thinking about in terms of staying in your own home. Again, the stairs. And if you are in your own home and your health changes, do you have the financial means to bring in care? Is it physically possible to bring in care? If you have a bedroom upstairs, can the bedroom come downstairs? Is there a bathroom on the main floor? What are all of are there limitations there? And then perhaps you can stay, but maybe you need to update the home and make some modifications to be able to make that kind of one floor living. But then that comes back to finances. So you have the finances to be able to do that, and how long will that last? Transportation. Many of us are losing our, will lose a license and driving around. So how are you connected to the community? Can you get out and look after yourself or someone, and then are you needing again to have is there financial burden in having someone to come in and help you to bring the groceries, to do the cooking, to do all of those things? So staying in our own homes is ideal. That's what we all want to do. But let's really look at that in a real perspective. And the other is empty rooms and kind of the taxes. What are we paying for? How much? What's our lot size? How big is our house? What's our heat and hydro? Are we paying for things that we don't need or use? And then can those funds be better used on something else, perhaps home care? One of the things in staying in your own home, and we talk about modernization, modifications, so those can be done. Garth is going to talk about sort of how we can adapt our current living space and perhaps even a future home to be able to address some of those needs in terms of care and finances and safety. And so we'll come back to Garth. He'll have a whole presentation on this later. But there is an option here and in Burlington. So it was Bill 23 that was passed a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, which allows more than one dwelling on the same property. So we can have up to 4 residences. We'll talk later about what we can have. So, but the communities, the cities have had to create new bylaws and zoning regulations and things to be able to accommodate it. So it's legislated and it's possible. Option 2. So we're actually on option 3. Moving to a smaller home. So So first of all, we're gonna talk about that a smaller home, go back up a little bit. Properties are either freehold or condo. Sometimes, we often hear about people talking about condos, but they're referring to a condo apartment. But you can have a detached condo, a townhouse condo, a semi-condo, and you can have a condo apartment. So the freehold and condo is really the type of ownership. So when we're looking at moving to a smaller home, it can be any of those, and it can be freehold or condo. So there's advantages to making those changes. But it's important to understand, if you're moving into a condo, what are those rules and regulations, the policies, the costs, the reserve fund. We had a presentation on condo living back in October 2024, so there's the video replay is on the website, you can go refer back to that. But it was a real eye-opener for people who are considering living in condos and what all the things that you really need to be thinking about when you're considering that option. Also moving to a smaller home, so it could be primarily I see that people in the older demographic want to move to one floor living. So in Burlington, bungalows are in high demand, and we don't have tons of newer bungalows on smaller lots that people, they could be older, so they don't have larger bedrooms, they don't necessarily have big bathrooms, they don't have the closet space. So the supply is limited, and we're kind of landlocked here in terms of what we can build. So they're not as plentiful as they could be in our community. So hence the prices have increased in terms of what it costs to buy a bungalow. And then if we're selling a 2-story, 4-bedroom home, and then switching to a bungalow, we think, okay, we're gonna come away with a whole pile of cash in our pocket, but that's not necessarily the case because of the demand on the bungalow living. So when you're moving into something smaller, some of the benefits, your costs perhaps can go down, the taxes can go down. It may be easier to lock the door and head out of town and not have to worry about it. It may be in a better location. The community, again, if we're looking into condo apartments or condo buildings or any of those types of complexes, there's community. Often in those, some of the condos that appeal to older adults have lots of social activities in them, and they have trips that they go to Niagara, they go to the casino, or they go out and they have shopping trips, and but they also have social events within the building. So there are card games and barbecues and all sorts of things. So it targets that isolation piece that I addressed earlier when you're living by yourself in a house on your own somewhere where no one else can get to. When you're in a condo building or condo community, that concern goes away. So again, moving to a smaller home, again, you can buy a smaller detached property, you can buy a smaller townhouse, semi, all freehold, but you can also purchase those in a condominium format. So in fact, I live in a house, it's a detached house, but it's a full condominium. So the condo pays, or takes care, I pay, the condo takes care of the grass cutting and the snow shoveling and the windows, the doors, the roof, all of that maintenance. So that's, again, people are thinking if you're moving to a condo, you're moving into a condo apartment building where that necessarily have to be the case. Also, in terms of condos, there's a whole variety of different types of condo corporations, and it's important to know what that corporation is actually covering, because there are other condos where they're just looking after the road and some of the exterior maintenance, some of the common elements, but you're looking after your house and your roof and your windows and your doors, all of that thing. So it's really, really important to understand that there are differences, but also to know that they exist, because a lot of people don't realize that these types of communities do exist. It's important also to know about who's on the board of a condominium, and to become involved and know where your money is being spent and how it's being spent, and to make sure that it's financially viable. There's some horror stories that are out there now in terms of the poor upkeep and the poor financial reserves that some condominium corporations have. So it's important when you're purchasing a condo, whatever type it is, to understand what the finances are. and to ask questions. So then the next option is, okay, so we're gonna sell our house and then we're gonna rent. And sometimes easier said than done. You can rent again, you can rent a detached home, you can rent a townhouse, you can rent an apartment, a condo apartment, and you can rent an apartment that's just a straight rental building. So in Burlington, I've been working with several clients who've been trying to find rental accommodations. And when you're coming from a house and seeking out perhaps a rental condominium, we have a predominance in Burlington of new builds, and they're smaller, so the units themselves are smaller. So when we're coming from a larger home, what I'm finding most people are struggling with what is available in terms of rental space. There are buildings that are older, so have a larger footprint, larger bedrooms, more closet space, all those things that tend to appeal to a senior demographic, but those are not always readily available. It's also important to know that there's a difference between renting from a private individual versus renting in a straight rental building. When you sign a lease contract, you're protected by the lease, your tenancy is protected by the lease term. In a rental, we'll call it a rental building, you'll either write a new lease for another year or it'll go month to month to month, but you will never be subject to being evicted or to have that tenancy terminated unless you don't pay your rent or unless you create some havoc and it's private enjoyment. But in a private residence, so we call those more likely a condo or a house, some other individual or corporation owns that property. They can at some point sell that property. The tenant is protected by the lease as long as there is a lease in place. The tenant goes with the property. Unless the new buyer is going to use that property for themselves. So those condos, we're going to talk about condo apartments. So if we find a condo apartment that's larger and has all the amenities that we want and has the parking and has the green space and has all of those things that we want, there's always the risk that at some point that owner is going to sell that unit or want it back for themselves. So there's no guarantee there that that's a permanent solution. So it's important to know who that landlord is and what their plans are, but then again, anything can change. As my husband says, if you want a guarantee, buy a toaster, because there's no guarantees in any of this. So that's the point that is around private or corporate ownership. When you're renting, we'll talk about retirement homes in a few minutes, but technically you are renting in a retirement home. You are renting that space and then you're also purchasing services. So that is a rental option. So availability I think is probably the biggest concern that I experience, is because when I work with people and they want to sell their house and go and find a rental suite somewhere, and we go out and they're always very surprised that it doesn't exist. What they want is not there. So it's not something that we can just go quickly and we're going to have our pick of options. It does take time. Can it be done? Absolutely, but it's not something that can happen quickly or necessarily. So there is also an option, and it's you sell your house, so it's renting, and it's a little bit of both. You sell your house, but then you rent it back from the new owner. So we'd be looking for an owner who's an investor buyer who wants to purchase that property for whatever reason. Either it's a long-term investment, or that would be in their future plan to move into themselves. But then you would sell your house to that individual or that corporation potentially, and then lease it back from them. So again, easier said than done. In today's environment, the investor buyers are a little scared, I guess, because of the economy, the interest rates, the security of the tenant, or the caliber of the tenant, and having their property destroyed, or people not paying their rent. But this is an option that can happen. Also in terms of condominiums, so the condo fee that whole system needs to make sense financially for that investor buyer, because the purchasee is paying a purchase price. They are looking to that rent payment to basically subsidize their mortgage payments. So the mortgage, because the interest rates are high, and prices are high, so those monthly payments then to carry the mortgage are high. And then also on top of that, the condo fees are escalating. So when you add all that together, then the amount of rent you would need to pay to be able to fund, to make that a financially viable vehicle for the investor can be a little bit challenging. Can it be done? Absolutely, but again, it may be not ideal in all situations. So there's also something called life lease. So life leases are properties that you purchase, again, condos, townhouses. Actually, I think there's even some detached. But you are purchasing the right to live in the property for the duration of your lifespan. And they're generally age restricted. They're owned by not-for-profit corporations, and they have very specific rules in terms of who can live there and what you do. There's always, so you're buying it for a price. You are also then paying a fee, whether it's their club, however they call it, but there will be a fee that might include taxes and hydro and all of those things. Every one of them is different, and they all have their own setup. So there's not like a standard format that says if you're going into a life lease here, you're gonna have the same thing as a friend who's living in a life lease in another property. The other thing to keep in mind is that, Andy will talk about this, but they can't always be financed. So if you're looking to, you don't have enough funds, like you sell your house, but it's not enough to cover the cost of that life lease property, then there may be some challenges there, but it's not impossible, but it's typically the banks will not fund those properties. So those are some of the examples. So in Burlington, Maranatha Gardens on New Street, St. Elizabeth Village in Hamilton, and then Woodside Views in Oakville, but there are others. Also, when you die, so the resale of a life lease goes, you can sell it on the open market, but there is some control with the corporation that there needs to be some approval from them. There's a fee that's paid to them in turning over that property to another party. And then also to live there, you would need to be a specific age. Generally, it's 55 or over. So it's not like you can buy it and then have your kids move in there, unless they're 55 and over. So there's also some newer things that are coming to the market, maybe not so new, but home sharing. So home sharing is an opportunity where you may have a house and some space in your home, and then you want someone to come and live with you. They pay a rent, but although it's not called rent, but they're paying you a fee to use space in your home, and then potentially share in some of the responsibilities. So it could be you get a university student who will cut the grass and shovel the snow. So you're generating some income to be able to cover the carrying costs there, but also to help with the isolation and also with help around the home. So there are some companies that are doing this, and one is called Home Share Alliance. They will actually go out and match people together. The home care toolbox is they just provide you the resources to do that, and you need to go and figure it out on your own and find the people that you want to share with. And then there's another company called Senior Women Living Together. So this is a relatively new organization. So it's a website where you would go in and find other people that are looking for the same type of solution, and then you would go out together to find a problem. There's another company called Spaces Shared, and they are students who are looking for space in adult homes. So it's the same type of thing, but that's a program that's geared specifically to students. Then also co-housing. So if you think of the Golden Girls up in Port Perry, you would have probably heard about that. So it was 4 women that got together. They actually purchased a property, renovated it completely, so that they each had their individual bedroom and private space. They had shared kitchen, they had shared living space, but they owned that property collectively. So that's again, an easier said than done type of situation, because there's lots of legalities that go into that, like the terms of the ownership, what happens when somebody passes or doesn't want to be there anymore, how often do I get to have company over, who can stay overnight, who's responsible for the cooking, where are we gonna keep our stuff. And then the one that we've talked about is they've had a space in the basement so they could bring in a caregiver, so if they ever needed care, it was built in. So there are those options. So those are typically, I'm gonna say purchase opportunities, so you find the people who you wanna live with and you purchase a home together and make that work. Home Care Hub is another, it's a kind of a bit of a hybrid, because they seek out the homes and bring in people who live communally, and they have a caregiver within the home. So you're paying a fee to provide the service and the care. You don't own the home, you're basically renting the space, but it would be like, I'm gonna say, mini long-term care home, mini, yeah.
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, Jeanette, sorry.
Sorry, we can't hear that, so it needs a microphone.
Yeah, so Home Care Hub was actually created by a doctor at a Credit Valley Hospital. And it came about as a result of his frustration that when people were being discharged out of a hospital, they had nowhere to go. So he saw this idea in Wisconsin and he brought it here. So he has homes throughout. There's homes in Hamilton, there's no more in Burlington, and basically he goes in, he takes a bungalow and they completely renovate the inside. They put an elevator in so they can put somebody, there's usually 2 rooms in the basement, let's say 2 rooms on the main level. They're completely accessible, including bathrooms. They have a kitchenette and they have a staff on site 24 hours a day to manage the care of the people in the home. So what you're basically doing is you're sharing the cost of that caregiver. And they also have social workers. They create teams of caregivers, let's just say PSWs, a nurse practitioner, a doctor typically, and they'll visit the home and they'll check in and provide the care 24/7. So yeah, amazing option. But anyways,
yeah, thank you, Jeanette. So there's also a movement towards they're called NORCs, Naturally Occurring Retirement Communities. So there are some areas in Burlington which that is, and I'm going to say that there are some condo buildings that are not officially a NORC, but that they have a high percentage of senior population. So there is, I can see in the future that there will be services, more healthcare services and support services brought into those buildings, that they'll be permanently there and accessible to the residents, so that it, not to say but there are retirement homes, but it gives a different opportunity, a different choice, which is everybody wants a choice. Talk about retirement homes, so there are many in our community. You just need to understand that they are all the same, but they're all different. The pricing is different among them, the services that they offer, the amenities that they offer, and they all cater, I guess, are geared to perhaps a different, not a different demographic, but they have a different appeal. Each one of them has a different appeal. So it's important to if you're looking at retirement living, to know to check out several, to understand the costs that are involved there and what they're charging you for. Understand that, again, in a retirement home, you are renting the space. I did talk about it before. One of the concerns around renting is how much is your rent going to increase annually, because it can increase annually. If a property is built and not occupied not occupied before 2018, then it's not subject to rent control. Anything after 2018 is not subject to rent control. Anything before 2018 is. So your rent could go up $3,000 a month, and they have the right to do that if it's built after 2018. So again, in a retirement home, you're paying a portion is a rent piece, which can or cannot, depending on when that property was built, be subject to rent control. And then there's this part of it that you're paying for services and then all the amenities and things in the building. So you need to understand kind of how that breaks down. What you're paying for, can the services be added? What services can be added? How long can you stay there? Can you stay till end of life? Is there support there? And what happens to home care? Is the home care provided within the building or bringing in home care from Ontario Health and Home, and how is that working? So it's important to do your homework, speak to the gals here, because they will all be able to answer those questions a whole lot better than me. And then lastly, the long-term care. So we've talked about this over and over and over, but it's important to reiterate that long-term care is very different from retirement residences. Long-term care is governed and managed by Ontario Health and Home in the province of Ontario. It's on an application basis. I don't know what the stats are now. Anybody know what the waiting list is for 50,000 people waiting for wait list. So basically the only way you're going to get in there is if you're in very, very dire straits. Likely you're in the hospital, you cannot go home, nobody can care for you, and then you wait to see where there's a room. The prices are fixed by the government, depending on whether you're in a private or semi-private room. It's across the province, the rates are the same, but I think people in our younger years grew up to think that that's going to be there to take care of us when we're older, and the reality is it's not working very well. So that's it for me. I'm going to turn it over to Garth now. He's going to talk more about the accessory dwellings, and then we'll come back and have some more chat.
All right. Hi everyone, my name is Garth Brown. Been involved with affordable housing for a few decades now. In 2013, I was compelled to buy a home here in Burlington, just north of Costco, and I was helping Holton Multicultural Council, who serves newcomer families in the area, and we were picking and choosing families that could move into the 11 units they had, and then the other 14 would go back on the housing wait list until 6 months or a year later when we had another unit. So I said, let's just buy a house. We bought it, got possession, moved family in on the main floor the day we got possession, and we created a legal basement apartment, because that was all you could do back in 2013. And we handed keys to a young woman and her daughter who were escaping an abusive relationship, and it changed their lives, it changed my life, because I realized with a fixed address, everything changes. And I think we're all blessed here that we all have fixed addresses. And to the point that Marion's made, and before I go further, hats off to Marion and Lisa, your team, for bringing everyone together like this time and time again. An informed decision is the right decision. And ultimately, you don't know what you don't know until you come to meetings like this and others. I'm not sure which way this is going to go. I've put the note here, take control. And every homeowner I meet in my journey feels better after I leave. And it's not something I've done, but they've gotten control because they've gotten information that helps them make the right decisions. And I encourage all of you to explore all the great people around the tables here, to find out what their offers are. And I'm certainly happy to meet with those in the room. And I'll ask now, how many of you are homeowners and own, I'll put up your hand if you're a homeowner here. Sizable number. And how many of you keep your hand up if it's a detached single-family dwelling? Okay, all right. You're very much in a good place because you've got some options available that many others don't. For those who didn't have their hand up at the end there, you probably know a homeowner, all right? It could be a family member, it could be a neighbor, a friend who has that single-family dwelling on a property, and that is gold. It's like taking equity that you already have and finding ways that you can leverage it to make it even more appropriate for your next stage. And a lot of mature homeowners that I meet with are looking not to age in place, but to age on property. They want to stay in their neighborhood, close to their family, their friends, their doctors. They don't want to move somewhere else. I'm going to take a chance. Where did we go? Oh, other way. Which way are we going here? Oh.
Oh.
No, there you go. I'll leave it to me, right? Check we should get it back up. Thank you. That's better. All right. I'm just going to show this first. Everyone knows this building, probably in this room. All right. Everybody been there, done that? Okay. Back about 10 years ago, I was doing a presentation like this, only it was about an hour long, not 10 minutes, so I'm going to have to fly now. And I got back to my table after doing the presentation, and a wonderful woman was crying beside me. And she said, if I knew what you just told me a year ago, I'd be in a different place. A year ago, she was living in a single-family dwelling. It was getting too much for her. The gardening, the snow, we all know it. She ended up selling that property and moving to Brantford, because Brantford was cheaper then, not so much now, but back then it was cheaper, and she could make the numbers work, right? What she made and moved on. So that experience made me realize that I don't want anyone crying today, okay? No one leaves crying. Because ultimately, what we have is an opportunity to leverage that equity, or for friends that you know, to leverage the equity they have in their homes to create more living space. Right now, and I pulled this off of the internet, it's not my numbers, but you can double check them. Right now in Toronto, it's $2,400 a month for a one bedroom. It's not far from that here in Burlington. I know that for sure. $5,000 a month in long-term care. It was just mentioned by Marion. The other option is to create an accessory dwelling unit, or ADU, here in Burlington. To talk to the city, you got to call it an additional residential unit, ARU. But anyways, to create additional housing on your property, and it's not shared housing, it would be autonomous housing, where you're living in a home that has a kitchen, living room, bedroom, bathroom, all to yourself that way. And so what we're doing now is creating these spaces, not just in basements, which was, again, 10 years ago, the only option, but today we have so many creative solutions because we can create detached homes in backyards. And in fact, did you know in Burlington alone, those who held their hand up at the end of that quick survey earlier, there are 25,000 homes that are already zoned, not only to allow you to build one legal additional residential unit, so let's say a detached home in your backyard, but you can also create a basement apartment. You could also put an addition on, or on the second story of your home. Every homeowner in Burlington, I won't say every homeowner because some condos and all don't allow, but people who own homes that qualify for that can add up to 3 units on their property plus the principal residence. In Oakville, you can only put 2 units on a property, but in Burlington, you're allowed 3. So you've got a tremendous opportunity now to explore what you could do for yourselves, maybe for a family member. Right now I'm working with a lovely family, not just a person, but a family in Kitchener, and they're going to create a home environment in the principal residence for the grandparents and the parents, and then the adult children are going to live in the detached unit that we're building in the backyard. And again, we've got limited time here, but Marion mentioned, not only do we take a look at your opportunities in terms of new housing considerations, but let's drill down on where you're living right now and determine what mobility changes would be appropriate for you with your needs today and perhaps your needs tomorrow. And that's the grab bars, the right rails, the right lighting, universal design. So many components come into it on a person-by-person, family-by-family basis. So we'll take a look at that at the same time all the way through. Working to the next steps, we did the survey. So with Mary's Arc, my wife and I founded this social enterprise a year ago. Our focus is to inform and inspire change. And that is for homeowners to understand what their options are, understand what their needs are today and tomorrow. So many families we meet are wrestling with affordability. It may not be the mature homeowner that we're meeting with who owns the property and perhaps even mortgage-free, but they may have adult children who are really struggling to find a place to live. And they may not want to live on top of each other, but a detached home in a backyard is an ideal solution for many of them, and work that way. And right now, family up on the mountain in Hamilton, the parents are moving into the detached unit, ground floor, mobility friendly, lots of natural light, brand new, so they're gonna love it. And their children are moving into the principal residence. Okay? So everyone's got a different need, everyone's got a different solution. Can't cover them all today, but definitely would welcome a chance to have you attend the meeting that Marion mentioned, which will be taking place on August 24th at her offices, where we'll really dive into it in detail. So I won't, again, do a little bit of repetition there. All the different kinds. You can build secondary suites throughout the country now. So I was building myself for 10 years. I've transferred because of health issues. I had to get off the tools. So my wife and I said, well, why don't we scale the awareness? And so now I've aligned with 6 companies, pardon me, 7 now. 2 of them cover the entire province of Ontario. Most of them are in the Golden Horseshoe area already, but so there's options. And what the homeowners I work with love about that is because I've got experience with these builders. They have a commitment to Mary's Arc homeowners because they want to perform and meet and exceed expectations, because they want more business from Mary's Arc in the future. So there's a pretty strong trust element that we don't always find in the contracting industry, for sure. All right. So again, the different varieties are there. I won't go into detail here. I'm going to jump way ahead here. That was the home in Burlington, that we bought back in 2012 and converted in February 2013 for that woman and her daughter in the basement there. So it can be a humble bungalow or it could be a mansion. We work with such a diversity of homeowners and what they have and what they'd like to have. So I'm just going to go through. I was showing this slideshow to a presentation over at St. Patrick's Church here in Burlington a couple of months ago. And a woman in the audience said, where is it here? This one. Said, I live there. And she was a woman who lived there for 8 years. It turned her life around because she was able to, her and her son lived in this home that we created, and it got her stabilized and able to move forward in her life. And so, these things are happening. And while Mary's Arc focuses on family first, we want to help you and your family meet their housing needs with affordability, dignity, and security. There's such a need. Right now, there's over 8,500 households here in Halton Region on the housing wait list. 8,500 households. A third of them are seniors. All right? There could be some of you in this room who are on that wait list right now, okay? But ultimately, we have a solution right in our backyards. And we can do this in 4 months, not 4 or 10 or 15 years, which unfortunately with Build Canada Homes, most of their projects are decades out. Anyways, I'm going to jump ahead because here's the future. Get past the garage conversions because they're allowed here in Burlington. We completed one recently. We're installing 2 homes of this nature in Brantford today. They just started. We got the permits and everything's moving forward. A housing agency in Brantford has 80 plus properties that they own. And so they've got families living in those properties, but they've got backyards in each one of those properties. So we worked with a manufacturer in Brantford who builds these in a factory, ships and cranes them onto helical piles, and so overnight, literally, you've got housing set up. So 2 of them are being installed today, and we're so excited because we've got 80 more properties that we can create homes for people in need that are served by this agency overnight. And I know Andy was asking, how much are these things? So if you're looking at something manufactured in factory, it can be as low as $115,000 to $150,000, all right, depending on finishes and the footprint and all the rest. If you start looking at something like in the bottom right corner here, and this is again a Burlington project, that was the backyard before, too much lawn to mow, and now you've got a brand new home, okay, created that way. So these detached units of this nature can be anywhere from 200 even to 300,000 if you want, depending on the footprint and the finishes that you want to look at that way.
How many square feet is that?
Oh, thank you for asking. Tiny homes, because everybody hears tiny homes, right? It's in the news. These are not tiny homes, all right? The smallest one that I've been involved with creating, other than the factory-built one that you just saw, are usually anywhere from 450 to 850 square feet. Think about 850. You don't find apartment buildings with 850 square feet anymore. So they're beautiful, and you've got sliding doors, natural light, all the components that make your house a home in that way. Other examples. This is the larger picture of that one, obviously. This is an amazing manufacturer from Font Hill who is in the aerospace industry. He was an engineer. He took that knowledge and put it into the modular home industry. So they're one of the 7 companies that we're aligned with. And when you walk into this place, it's like walking into a recording studio because they've created an insulation, a continual insulation barrier, which is required by code, but they've gone beyond. And it's state of the art. And you really realize the difference when you walk in for soundproofing and all the rest. In some municipalities like Hamilton, you're allowed 6-meter height, which is about 19 point something feet. And that's exactly what we hit on this one. And what we did here was we created a raised basement because in many municipalities, including Burlington, you can have 2 units in a detached backyard unit. So think about it, you could have a rental income stream coming from the basement unit, you could have a family opportunity on the main floor, plus you've got the principal residence. So that's what we did here, we raised it. Hamilton doesn't even have that allowance yet, but we did it in advance to kind of be ready for it when it comes that way. All right, another example again of a beautiful home. This is an award-winning laneway suite in Hamilton by one of our companies we're aligned with. Putting a second story on, so many bungalows can be reinvented, and you can have 2-bedroom homes above a new 2-car garage based on the footprint. This is an Ancaster actually, so it turned out beautifully. And the most important thing is we dig below the surface. In Oakville, this is where this is, near Loyola High School, if you know where that is, in Glen Abbey. We were told by the city the allowance for a house on this property was limited to 465 square feet. But, to Marion's point earlier, many times provincial bills supersede municipal bylaws. So what we did was we went below or past what the town told us we could do, and because of provincial allowance for 45% lot coverage, we were able to find out that on this very uniquely shaped property, the homeowners can build a 1,000 square foot home. 1,000 square feet. And they're still below that 45% lot coverage. Because it's the principal residence plus the detached home added together, they're still underneath that 45% threshold. So there's so many things that we do to go beyond what the, let's say what the municipality says you can do, to make sure that you leverage your full value on what you look at and what you can explore moving forward. All right? Make sure that you trust your contractors, and this is where the ones we've aligned with are trustworthy. We're really moving in our community towards finding solutions that are life-changing, not just a handout, but a hand-up. And so with those of you in the room who might have space and might not need it for family purposes, I'd encourage you to think about a program such as Haven to Home. And this is a program that Halton Women's Place, the women's shelter for abused women and their families, is just up here on Grant, and they have another home in Milton. They have 33 families in their shelter with nowhere to move. So we are encouraging homeowners who have that interest to think about creating that detached unit in the backyard, and that could be a home where the family moves in and moves forward with their lives. And it's been very well received all the way around. Home Sweet Hope is providing the outreach supports for those families, helping the woman get post-secondary schooling, get daycare, and things move forward so much faster as a result. Okay? I know Q&A is after this, so I won't go further than to say, please join us on the 24th at Marion's office up on Harvester. Lots more to share with you. And it's again all about knowing what your options are as a homeowner, or if you don't own your own home right now, if you know someone who does and would be interested in finding out more, please invite them to explore what their possibilities are for themselves, for the family, and for the community. Okay. So thank you very much.
So thanks so much, Garth. So we're just going to continue. Andy's going to get up and talk about how you fund your change, how you fund your housing later in life. Because as we know, as we talked about before, our financial plan and our lifespan may not be in alignment. So there's ways to be able to access funds, access capital, access the asset that you have in your home. So we'll turn it over to Andy.
Okay, great, thank you, Marion. Garth, really enjoyed learning about ADUs, and now rethinking.
Could you lift the microphone up?
Okay.
Just lift it right up.
Okay, how's that? Is that better? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, Marion did say stay close, so I'm gonna try to stay close. Okay, great, that's much better. Anyways, I was just saying, Garth, you now have me rethinking whether I'm gonna age in place, so I'm now rethinking that, so thank you for that. Marion asked me to come today. My name's Andy Hagen. I'm a mortgage broker. And just to give you a little bit about my background, I worked at TD Bank for 10 plus years, and then now 5 years as a mortgage broker. So I really enjoy helping people out with their mortgages, especially also working with older adults as well. It's really important, just like anything else, that you take the time to plan and figure out how you want to manage your retirement. So, awesome. Okay, so financing options for seniors. So, ideally, I clearly understand that you don't want a mortgage when you retire, right? Like, I don't think I want one. If I asked the question, do you want a mortgage when you retire? I don't think anyone would put their hand up. So I do understand that. But I think the challenging situation is that the cost of living continues to increase. If you are planning to age in your condo or your home, and maybe more specifically in your home, life happens. You might have life events from a health perspective where you need additional cash. You might have life events from a maintenance perspective where you need some cash. Even myself, like maybe you need a roof or a furnace or an air conditioner. I don't know why, but sometimes these things always tend to come at once, and it can affect your income. So it's just important to think that way. Can you qualify for a mortgage? Yes, you can. And it's just important to think that age is not a barrier, but there are certain things how you can approach it that you need to kind of keep in mind as you're going through this. So really, what are your options? The first option is traditional financing. So I'm sure everyone's very familiar with, a mortgage, line of credit, that type of thing. So with these types of products, you are going to need good credit. You're going to need steady income, and you may also need home equity as well. So those are certain things that you're going to need. And oftentimes when I'm working with older adults, they're downsizing, and they may want to downsize into a condominium or to a smaller home. And if you look at the numbers, often they may want to just keep a smaller mortgage of some type. Could be a line of credit, could be a smaller mortgage, or it could be a smaller reverse mortgage. The important thing is just to look at all the numbers associated with each and just see what makes most sense for yourself. So what are some of the key considerations? So when you're financing anything from a traditional perspective, they want to look at income. So majority of cases you're going to have OAS, you're going to have CPP, you may or may not have a small pension, and you may or may not have investments. The more that you have, the more beneficial it is. Credit rating is also important. So it's as you're going through life, it's always important to continue to make regular payments on your vehicle, on your credit card, on your line of credit. You want to keep your credit rating up as much as you can. Debt to income is important. I know my mom, and I think about my mother-in-law as well. They're very careful. They watch to see how much they're spending each month. They're not getting a new car. I just said to my mother-in-law just last week, I know your car's 10 years old, but if you're driving another 3 to 5 years, there's nothing wrong with the vehicle that you have. So just the idea that anything you can do to kind of maximize your income and minimize your debt, you can, by all means, you have a line of credit, you use your credit cards, but anything that you can do to manage that. And the reason being is that when you go to apply for these types of products, these traditional products, they're looking at that balance of income coming in and how much debt you're currently paying. And then the last piece is just the property itself. So when you're talking financing, we're looking at traditional homes and traditional condos. So life leases, you just cannot finance them. And it's really because you want a property where you have title. You have legal title, or the bank can have legal title. And the reason they want that is just in case, a challenging situation happens, maybe you're unable to continue to make your payments. They want the ability to have access to that property to resell it, unfortunately. So what are your options? So again, pretty straightforward. So if you're downsizing, you can look at getting a small mortgage. That could be an option. If you want to stay in place, so we're talking about ADUs, if you maybe have a small mortgage on your current property, or you have no mortgage or no line of credit, you can look at refinancing that property to maybe pay for that ADU. And there's other things that you can look at as well, like maybe you have family coming in who, if you're thinking about an ADU, maybe they take on those payments. So then you have to start thinking about ownership, right? So there's different things that you can do and you can think about. And also, home equity line of credit is another thing that you can think about. So that's a line of credit that's attached to the value of your property, but it's also based on your income as well. So I'm sure that many homeowners here already have lines of credit or home equity lines of credit. So that's another option that you can use, again, to help fund and pay for an ADU if that's what you're looking for. These are all of your best rate and cost options. Just keep that in mind from a financing perspective. Now, one program that when I'm working with older adults, we always are looking at net worth lending programs. Now, these programs, so let's say you have an OAS in CPP, you may or may not have a small pension, but you might have investments. Like maybe you were lucky enough to save, and so you have RSPs, or you've converted them to RIFs, or you have a TFSA or cash, or you have, anyways, those types of investments, you can actually use their value to help fund a mortgage or help pay for a refinance. You often need a minimum of about $250,000 to $500,000, for this type of approach to work. And you also need a lower loan to value. So in these situations, you're generally you could be putting 40 to 50% down, maybe a little more. It really depends. Everyone's situation is different. And if you're in a situation where maybe you're doing an ADU and you want to bring a family member on, you can opt to do 20%. So there's different ways that you can look at it and try to fund these properties. And this is just the investment type. So cash, GICs, TFSAs, non-registered investments as well. And then your RIF could be discounted by up to 30%. I think the other thing that's key when you're looking at this approach is you also want to make sure that you're working with an accountant and a financial planner, just to make sure that if you're going to cash out some investments, what are the tax implications? All of these kinds of things are really important to consider. Reverse mortgage. So I think there's a lot of, maybe misinformation and unknown information about reverse mortgages that are out there. So essentially, I just want to touch on some of the key aspects, and then I'll kind of just talk about a couple examples where I've been able to help people out. So the key is you need to be 55 years old, and you have to be the registered property owner of that property as well. It has to be your primary residence, so if you're lucky enough to have, say, a property in Burlington and you own a second property, you really have to focus that reverse mortgage on your primary residence, not on that second property. Income. So the benefit of this product is that you don't have to meet all those income requirements that I talked about earlier. You really just need equity in your house. That's kind of the key thing. There's limited to no credit checks on the reverse mortgage. It's really just understanding how much equity do you have in your property. So an example might be maybe you have a $1 million house in Burlington or whatever it would be. you don't have a mortgage on it, they could literally lend you up to, half of that or 30%. So they could lend you anywhere from $300,000 to half a million. And one of the benefits too is that you don't have to take the full amount. I had a client last year where she was living in a bungalow townhouse in Cambridge, and it was valued about $735,000. And she only needed $80,000 just to pay off a couple debts. They had borrowed from their life insurance policy, so they wanted to pay that back and pay down a couple debts. So it was a perfect setup for them, and it was a perfect solution for them. So it was a really good fit. And the other thing that's interesting as well is that you can actually make payments on these reverse mortgages. So you can make interest payments, and then oftentimes you can pay the interest plus an additional 10% per year. So you can use it like a mortgage in a way. I had clients who just recently purchased a condo here in the Burlington area, and we really looked at options of, fortunately they had the cash so they could pay full cash for it. We looked at a combination of a mortgage and a HELOC, so actually having both. And then we looked at a combination of them putting down 50% and then going with a 50% reverse mortgage. And when I looked at all the costs with them, they all ended up costing roughly the same amount of money, because even if you pay cash for something, you're losing money when you're pulling your money out of the market, right? And with the reverse mortgage, their plan was that they were going to make interest payments for a year or longer, but it gave them the flexibility that they didn't have to make those interest payments if they didn't want to. So there's just lots of different options out there for everyone to look at. And I think the key is just looking at, what's the best fit for you. Again, you don't, just because you qualify for maybe $300,000, sometimes you could take 30, 25, or 35. It really depends on the company. I know that everyone probably sees, the CHIP reverse mortgage out there. That's the one that you see on TV all the time. But there's 3 other companies. There's EQ Bank. There's Home Trust. There's more and more companies are now coming out offering this product. And that's really it. So the last option is there's also private mortgages. It's not something that I recommend, but if you do find yourself where you've gotten yourself into a tricky situation, this is a really good, I wouldn't say really good, but it's a short-term solution to get you out of that tricky situation. I did have an older adult where the bank had approved them, and then when they took a closer look at their documentation, they said, sorry, I can't work with you. And so I ended up finding them a sort of short-term private solution so they could close on the property. But in the end, we were able to close just at another bank because they had slightly different policies that allowed them to use the investments that they had saved. So anyways, so that's the private option. And then again, this is the event that we have happening on August 17th, so that's next Monday at the office. We're going to spend more time going into more details about reverse mortgages. So anyways, thank you so much.
Thanks, Andy. Actually, so he did mention there's actually, and we'll talk about them more on Monday, but often when people are between properties and they're, they want to buy, in today's market, is it do I buy first or do I sell first, and which one works, and how do you get the money to be able to do that? So there's an opportunity to use a reverse mortgage to actually make your purchase, and so he'll talk more about how that all can come together. So again, not selling reverse mortgages, but just to know that there is use and appropriate use of these things that will not cause a lot of harm. Sorry. Yes, okay, so the comment here was on being clear that when you take a reverse mortgage, it's actually compounding interest, so you're paying interest on the interest. So again, depends on how you set up, we'll let Andy talk about this more on Monday, but how you set that up, and if you do pay the interest, and how you leverage that, and how you use that product for your purposes. I've got a whole bunch of slides here, I'm not going to go through them, but that's more about, you know, if you're making a change and you're looking at your house, and really do, I encourage you to involve your family. Don't let them be the drivers, but you be the drivers. It's all everyone wants to make decisions for themselves and be in control, so it's important that you take the lead in those conversations. But in fact, include them. Yes, ma'am.
Will your slideshow be on the website?
Absolutely. No, I can send out the
link?
slide deck. That's what it's called.
Thank you.
I have some resources here. I've got a bunch of guides that you're welcome to. These bigger guides, the selling guide and the seniors and the buying and selling are here. If you want one of those, come and get it. I mean, they're also available digitally. There's some other documents that are available at the back of the table. Make use of them as you can. Just thank you again for coming. And we have time, so again, we apologize because we started late and we're going to run a little bit late, but if you can stay, please do, and we'll be happy to answer the questions that you've got. Ma'am. Oh.
Gentlemen, thank you for coming today. Garth, I just wanted to ask you, does the government, is there any funding from the government for those dwellings?
Yeah, depends on what municipality you're in. And we had an amazing program in Burlington here up until last fall, and it was discontinued rather abruptly. The city has indicated they're putting those monies towards other initiatives, not to homeowners. Hopefully that will change, and maybe that could be a discussion for the mayoral discussion coming up soon. However, beyond that, there are incentives that are offered by March of Dimes, and I think it's handled by another agency now, but the March of Dimes is $15,000. So when you're looking at mobility improvement options, it's $15,000 per home, $15,000 per vehicle. So March of Dimes has that available. And on top of that, for ADU builds, for detached ADU builds, there is a full HST rebate available. So again, these are things that are so important for homeowners to know. I was speaking with one who's already agreed to go ahead with the program, and we got into it, and she had forgotten that I had mentioned this to her in one of our first meetings. So she was thrilled to think, you know, that she's going to get 13% back on what would have been a cost is now a grant in that sense. All right, but we look for whatever incentives are available and make sure you leverage them to your full advantage all the way.
Thank you. This is an open question, but do the rules of probate change with reverse mortgages?
No, they again, I'm not a lawyer, but they would be similar with a regular mortgage. Because essentially a reverse mortgage is a mortgage, but you're not making payments. Yeah.
Hi, I'm just wondering how the infrastructure of Burlington is going to support all these additional homes, the water in, water out, electricity, all that good stuff?
Thank you. Thanks for that question, because it's one that's asked not just here in Burlington, but right across Ontario. Across Ontario right now, we have 5 million empty bedrooms. Think about it, 5 million empty bedrooms in the province alone. When we're bringing these new homes onto properties, the water line and the hydro capacities have to be addressed. So quite often it does require moving from 100 amp service to 200 amp service, and that's a cost borne by the homeowner. And in Burlington Hydro is amazing to work with. The best utility I've ever dealt with when it comes to changing out meters and putting in new ones. Beyond that, when we do a calculation of how many water line, or what do you call it, outlets basically there are for water use, you have to look at washing machines, the washrooms, kitchen, dishwashers, etc. When you do the load calculation, it usually requires a widening of the pipes from the 3/4 inch most homes have to a 1 inch pipe to accommodate the volume of water needed, because the ADU in the backyard will be connected to the services of the principal residence, and they can be metered separately. That's often a question that's asked. But respectful of this question, because it comes up so often, we have such, the usage of our infrastructure right now is so depleted because of all these empty bedrooms, that I would suggest we could add a detached unit on most of those 25,000 properties already zoned for it, and we would not impact the actual use that the infrastructure was built for in the first place. Again, because of the transition of what we've seen with empty nesters, including my wife and I, and so many others. Okay, but a great question. Thank you for asking.
Anybody else?
I will mention, I've got brochures here if you'd like to pick one up before you leave today. Feel free to, and I'm happy to speak with you before the 24th, but ultimately answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
This slide is at every one of our presentations. Plan. So this session is being recorded. I apologize for those who were here last year. I did not send out the video recording. My month was not a very good one, and I just kind of ran out of time and energy. But I promise you that this will get sent out. It's been recorded and it will be sent out to you. Here again, not getting my emails, please let me know. Somehow we're dropped somewhere in the process, but we want to make sure that we are connected digitally. Thanks again to our educational partners. Everybody's got busy lives. Everybody's scooting around today, but thank you so much for all of you. And remember that the next session is September. Peter isn't here today, but he'll be talking about disability tax credits. So we've had a presentation on this several months long, probably a year and a half ago. And so you'd be surprised at what you may qualify in terms of tax credits for disabilities. Perhaps there's something that will come into play with these dwellings. And then also don't remember about the session next Monday and the following Monday. They are at same time, 1:30 to 3, but they're at my office on Harvester Road. And if you do sign up, you'll get information about that, reminder about it, but you can sign on your evaluation form. You can talk to Ida or Lisa, or you can email me. And thank you very much. We didn't go that far over time. Thank you.